4 coffins lay beneath the chancel of Jamestown's 1608 church for over 400 years. In 2013, archaeologists opened them. Ancient DNA from 2 of those skeletons shared an identical mitochondrial haplogroup, H10E, found in roughly 1 in 225,000 Europeans. The match implied a maternal kinship absent from every known genealogy. That single genetic clue led researchers to a 1616 English court record and to a family secret that Jamestown's founders buried alongside their dead. Jamestown was founded in 1607 as England's first permanent settlement in North America. The colony began with 104 settlers. By the winter of 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time, only around 60 survived. Contemporary records describe deaths from famine, disease, and conflict. Mortality reached nearly 80%. Archaeological evidence includes mass graves and cut marks on bones indicating extreme hunger. Social order collapsed as food ran out. Surviving accounts mention the consumption of vermin and, in some cases, human flesh. The colony's leadership faced the loss of nearly every original settler. Authority passed rapidly among a shrinking group of officers and gentlemen. Burial in the chancel of the 1608 church was reserved for the most privileged. Only those with high status were interred there, including religious leaders, military commanders, and elite kin. The chancel was the most sacred part of the church, directly in front of the altar. Burial location reflected social hierarchy, even as the settlement neared collapse. The privilege of a chancel grave signaled both rank and connections to the colony's ruling families. These graves became rare physical evidence of who held power and survived long enough to be remembered. The extreme conditions of Jamestown's first years shaped not only who was buried, but how the living recorded and concealed their identities. The context of desperation and privilege at Jamestown set the stage for the later identification of these burials and the secrets they held. In 2010, William Kelso and the Jamestown Rediscovery team set out to pinpoint the original 1608 church within James Fort. Using high-resolution, ground-penetrating radar, they scanned the interior of the fort for subsurface features. The survey grid was laid out in 5-meter squares, each referenced to the 17th century fort plan. The radar detected a rectangular void measuring approximately 60 feet by 24 feet, matching period descriptions of the church's dimensions. Magnetometer readings revealed a dipolar signature consistent with stone foundation walls, ruling out a timber-only structure. These geophysical results identified the precise coordinates of the church at north 37 degrees 13 minutes 30.2 seconds, west 77 degrees 24 minutes 43.6 seconds. The data indicated a well-preserved chancel at the eastern end of the structure. The chancel's location aligned with documentary sources describing the placement of elite burials in front of the altar. Kelso's team overlaid the radar and magnetometer maps onto historical site plans to confirm the anomaly's dimensions and orientation. The evidence was sufficient to justify targeted excavation in the chancel area. Archaeologists marked out the perimeter and began removing overburden to expose the foundation footprint. The preserved chancel became the focus for systematic excavation, with all work documented by total station mapping and stratigraphic recording. The team's approach combined non-invasive geophysical survey with traditional field methods, reducing the risk of disturbing unmarked graves. The transition from remote sensing to shovel-ready excavation allowed for controlled recovery of burial evidence. The 2010 discovery provided a fixed spatial context for interpreting later finds. Kelso's mapping effort established the action locus for the investigation, transforming a centuries-old map reference into a testable archaeological target. Excavation in the chancel of the 1608 church began in November 2013. Archaeologists uncovered 4 graves aligned east to west, each placed directly beneath the chancel step. The burials were separated by less than a meter, indicating a deliberate arrangement reserved for individuals of high status. The coffins were constructed from eastern white oak, a species imported from the southeast Midlands of England. Microscopic analysis of the wood and stable isotope ratios confirmed the transatlantic origin of the timber. Each coffin featured mortise and tenon joinery, hand-cut with iron brads, and lacked the barrel stave construction seen in lower status burials elsewhere at Jamestown. 2 of the lids included forged iron hinges, a detail consistent with English gentry burial practices. The anthropomorphic shape and craftsmanship matched typologies from elite burials in contemporary London churches. All 4 coffins rested on a compacted sand platform, elevated above the surrounding soil by a deliberate stone-packed base. Stratigraphic logs recorded 3 distinct layers above the coffins: a clean sandfill, a thin ash band containing charcoal from the Starving Time, and a later organic-rich soil horizon. The placement of the coffins directly on the sand fill, beneath the ash, indicated that the burials occurred shortly after the church's consecration and before the worst famine period. The spatial arrangement placed each coffin's head toward the altar and feet toward the nave, in line with Anglican liturgical norms. The platform and alignment distinguished these graves from the rest of the cemetery and mirrored the social hierarchy of the colony's leadership. No coffin nails or metal plates were present, suggesting a preference for hand-finished joinery over mass-produced hardware. The absence of shroud pins or simple pit features ruled out laborer or servant burials. Karen Bruelheide led the osteological assessment of the remains. Only about 30% of each skeleton survived, but the preservation of long bone shafts and cranial fragments allowed for basic demographic analysis. The skeletal data, combined with the coffin evidence, established that these were adult males of above-average stature, consistent with English gentry profiles. The methodical recovery and documentation of the burial context provided the foundation for later artifact-driven identifications and ancient DNA sampling. Douglas Owsley examined the burial context and artifacts to assign identities to the 4 chancel graves. He combined spatial evidence, object typology, and documentary research to evaluate who these men might have been. A hexagonal silver reliquary was found beneath the clavicle of one skeleton. X-ray fluorescence confirmed the alloy as 93% silver, matching descriptions of Catholic devotional objects. The reliquary was in a Protestant chancel, which suggested clandestine religious practice, and supported assigning the burial to Captain Gabriel Archer, whose family had Catholic sympathies. Another grave contained a fragment of a silk sash with silver threads. Scanning electron microscopy identified the threads as nearly pure silver, woven into a pattern unique to the West family. The sash alloy matched a surviving West household inventory, linking this grave to Captain William West. A second sash recovered from an adjacent coffin bore a fleur-de-lis insignia. This detail corresponded to Sir Ferdinando Wenman, his knighthood and family arms. Both sashes were catalogued with precise 3-dimensional coordinates, which confirmed their original placement on the coffins. Lead assays of cortical bone from one skeleton showed concentrations of 126 parts per million, far exceeding colonial background levels. Elevated lead exposure pointed to a childhood among English gentry who used pewter and lead-glazed ceramics. This metallurgical signature supported the identification of Sir Ferdinando Wenman, whose family estate was documented for such household goods, and emphasized the role of lead in reconstructing social status. The artifact assemblage for the remaining grave included a simple shroud and clerical items with no personal jewelry or weaponry. The burial orientation and lack of adornment matched records for Reverend Robert Hunt, the colony's first Anglican minister. The simplicity of this burial reinforced his religious role in the early colony. Historical visitation records and English pedigrees accounted for 3 of the 4 men, but for William West, the genealogical trail ended abruptly. His name appeared in military rolls and in a nuncupative will, yet there was no baptismal record or formal West family pedigree. The absence of a documented mother or marriage settlement created a gap in the lineage and raised questions about his legitimacy and family connections. Artifact evidence alone could not resolve this kinship puzzle. That uncertainty set the stage for ancient DNA analysis as the next step in identification. The convergence of material culture, metallurgical data, and archival records narrowed the field of candidates, but it left the relationship between West and Wenman unexplained. The need for genetic evidence became clear as the investigation confronted the limitations of traditional historical sources. Iadau and Harney led the laboratory phase of the Jamestown Chancel DNA project. All sample preparation took place in a dedicated cleanroom with strict protocols to prevent modern contamination. Each bone was decontaminated with diluted bleach and ultraviolet light before sampling. The team selected the petrous portion of the temporal bone from one individual and a mandibular molar from another based on their high density and proven DNA retention in ancient remains. Powdered samples underwent silica-based extraction, followed by partial uracil DNA glycosylase treatment to reduce post-mortem DNA damage while preserving authentic molecular signatures. Extraction blanks and negative controls were included at every step to monitor for contamination. Library preparation used double-indexed adapters to track sample identity and prevent index hopping. Target capture focused on a panel of 1.24 million ancestry-informative single nucleotide polymorphisms called SNPS. Sequencing was performed on an Illumina Novasec 6000 platform. The Petrus sample yielded 12,294 callable SNPS. The molar produced 9,758 SNPS. These counts are lower than typical for ancient DNA studies, reflecting both the age of the remains and the challenging burial environment at Jamestown. Authentication metrics showed less than 2% modern human contamination. verified by mitochondrial and nuclear DNA analysis. Post-mortem damage patterns, including terminal C to T substitutions, matched expectations for 17th century bone. Despite the low SNP totals, the data passed established thresholds for ancient DNA authenticity. Harney's protocols ensured that all downstream genetic analysis rested on validated, reproducible evidence. David Reich's population genetic analysis began with the mitochondrial DNA extracted from the Jamestown samples. Both the petrous bone from Sir Ferdinando Wenman and the molar from Captain William West yielded the same mitochondrial haplogroup, H10E. This lineage is rare in modern European populations. In a reference panel of 3,500 British and Irish mitochondrial genomes, H10E appeared in only 0.21% of individuals. The probability that two unrelated people would both carry H10E is approximately 1 in 225,000. Reich's team confirmed the haplogroup call with 27 of 33 diagnostic SNPs and a quality score of 92%. This level of confidence ruled out sequencing error or contamination as sources of the match. The Y chromosome data, by contrast, showed discordant results. West was assigned to G2AL30 and Wenman to R1BL2, each with low SNP counts and posterior probabilities below 0.7. The divergent paternal lineages excluded a shared father. The mitochondrial concordance, combined with the statistical rarity, pointed to a maternal relationship between the two men. Reich recognized that the genetic evidence could not specify the exact nature of the kinship, whether half-siblings, aunt and nephew, or cousins. The strength of the mitochondrial match, however, made coincidence unlikely and prompted a targeted search through English legal archives. The genetic data shifted the investigation from the laboratory to the archive, focusing attention on the possibility of a concealed maternal link in the West family. The search for documentary evidence began in the National Archives at Kew. An archival researcher located the civil pleading Blount versus Abbott, dated March 3, 1616, filed under shelf mark C12247. The original bill of complaint was written on vellum, measuring roughly 30 by 45 centimeters. The document records John Blount of St. Mary on the Hill as plaintiff, alleging that Robert Abbott withheld rent on a property known as the White House. The phrase "wanly cozen" appears in the text, using the spelling cozen as a legal term for fraudulent withholding. The researcher requested the full transcription and compared it to the digital image in the Discovery portal. Associated files in the same series included a deposition by Thomas Garton and a bill of particulars detailing lease terms. The language "wanly cozen" or "friend" matched phrasing found in other early 17th century pleadings. Legal analysis confirmed that cozen in this context denoted exclusive deceit, not kinship. The shelf mark C12247 and the specific phrase became the basis for linking the legal record to the West and Blount households. This archival step provided a fixed reference point for interpreting coded references in subsequent documents. Cross-referencing genetic and documentary evidence settled the question of William West's parentage. Both West and Wenman carried mitochondrial haplogroup H10E, a lineage present in only 0.21% of modern British and Irish samples. The probability of two unrelated individuals sharing H10E is about 1 in 225,000. Their Y chromosome haplogroups differed, with West assigned to G2AL30 and Wenman to R1BL2, each with low SNP counts and posterior probabilities below 0.7. This ruled out a shared paternal line. The rare maternal match, combined with the absence of a baptismal record or a formal West family pedigree for William, directed attention to the legal archives. The 1616 Blount versus Abbott court record named Elizabeth West as an unmarried member of the West household and referenced a jewel intended for her nephew. The term "wanly cozen" or "friend" appeared in the pleading, a coded phrase for illegitimacy in early modern legal language. Elizabeth's lack of a marriage settlement and the matching household inventory linked her directly to William. The combined evidence established that William West was almost certainly Elizabeth West's biological son. The concealed birth explains both the genetic concordance with Wenman and the omission from formal family records. Today, high-coverage single nucleotide polymorphism data and rare haplogroup H10E mitochondrial signatures expose kinship that written archives only hint at. Legal records like Blount versus Abbott encode illegitimacy in veiled terms. Burial placement signals status, and lead isotopes confirm English origin. Science now verifies what history obscures. As ancient DNA rewrites early American lineage, every buried secret becomes subject to re-examination because evidence, not silence, defines identity. Share your perspective in the comments below.